Amen. Well, before I get started into the message, I just got to name the elephant in the room. I've got a stool up here. And the reason is I hurt my leg this week. Now, many of you might know this. Cody had surgery, and he's on crutches. I didn't want him to get all the glory and all of your sympathy, so I wanted to, kind of get a little bit of that. So don't feel bad for him today. Feel bad for me. No, I'm totally kidding. But I hurt my leg. I'm not sure exactly what I did. I strained a muscle in my thigh, and so I've been having trouble walking and standing for long periods. I'll admit it's a little bit better today, so we'll see. But I wanted to have a stool just in case. I didn't want to collapse in the middle of the message, so here I am. But you know me, I move around a lot. There's a really good chance I'm not going to stay on this thing the whole time. But I do want to dive into our message today, and I want to begin with a word: uncertainty. Uncertainty. I'm curious what you think of when you hear this word. I want to contend we all face it. A lot of times when we think of uncertainty, we probably think about the future, a decision that I've got to make, or I sense there's a fork in the road coming, and I'm not sure which way that I'm supposed to choose. We might be uncertain about what is to come. But I want to contend with you that it's not just limited to decisions or events in the future, but it can be in the present, and it can be in the past. There was a moment of uncertainty for me and my wife. So a few years ago, some of you know this, but many of you don't. My wife and I, we had a miscarriage. It was somewhat, it was not very long into the pregnancy when this occurred. It was pretty short, pretty tight. So we didn't have that long expectation suddenly taken away. It was only a matter of days. But it was still hard and challenging. And the uncertainty for me came from the fact that several years before that, when Levi was born, my wife and I were discerning, do we want to have another child? If we had to plan and we were to choose, what would we choose? And we're like, yeah, let's maybe have a third, but let's wait till around this time. We had some things coming in life and some big moments along the way. And all of this was before the pandemic, which upended everything. And so if our plan had gone according to what we had decided, a few years after Levi was born, we would have another, and that was kind of be our plan. Well, this was all delayed because of COVID. And then we get to this moment where it's like, okay, we're way older than we thought we would be to have this third, and so do we think we should? And we prayed about it, and we discerned, yeah, Lord, if you're going to do this, you'll do this. So we're not going to stop you. We're going to be open to it, but we feel like you're kind of opening this door. And so sure enough, we get pregnant. And we thought, this is what God's will is for our life. This is what we're supposed to do. And then a handful of days later, it's not. We thought we had discerned well. We thought we knew what God was doing for us. We thought we knew what life was going to look like, and then all of a sudden, it's not. And there was so much uncertainty. Did we not hear him right? Did we make the wrong choice? We felt like this was an open door. God, what are you doing here? And it was a really hard and challenging season. We are content with our family. We love our boys, and we're so excited to be this family of four, and we at the same time lament what could have been and the loss that it is. But all of this is surrounded with uncertainty. I have no idea why things happened the way that they did. I have no idea why this played out the way that it did. I don't understand what God was doing in all this. There's so much uncertainty for me. Have you had moments like this? Maybe you're in one right now. Maybe it is a big decision you've got to make, a career change. You're deciding about future schooling. You have a decision that is going to impact the rest of your life. But you're not sure. You're uncertain. But again, it's not just future decisions that uncertainty can be associated with. It can be right now. You're faced with a health diagnosis. You don't know how it's going to play out. You don't know what is in store for you. You don't know the road that you're going to walk. You know it's going to be hard, but what's going to happen? How are you going to feel? What are you going to be able to do or not do? Or maybe you've got a wayward son or daughter. They're adults now. They can make their own decisions, but you look at it and you're like, this is not what I would choose for your life. And you just don't know what's going to happen in their life. There's so much uncertainty. Or maybe you're grieving. You've lost a loved one. And you're looking at like, God, I don't understand who you are in this. Like, how can this be and have you be a good God? I don't understand how this all works. And you're questioning, God, are you here? Do you hear me? Are you present in this? Maybe the uncertainty is like, I don't know who I am. Am I valuable and significant? I feel isolated and alone. Like, what's my identity? Where do I find my worth, my value? Maybe you're just wrestling with these deep, fundamental questions, and all of it is uncertain. What is the uncertainty for you? Abram hit an uncertainty moment as well. We've been in this series where we are looking at the life of Abraham, this pivotal character in the Old Testament who's described in the New Testament as one of the key heroes of faith, maybe even the pinnacle version of what faith looks like. And we're looking at his life through the lens of faith to understand what faith is all about. And this guy, his name started as Abram, and it became Abraham later in the story. We're not quite there yet, so we're going to see Abram today. But we're going to see Abram wrestling with uncertainty and how his faith connects to that. Now, a lot of times when we think about faith, as we've said before, we often think it's like, oh, I just believe something or I agree with an idea or a set of ideas. Often it might be doctrine or whatever. Like, that's beliefs. These are the things I believe, I hold to. But as we've gone through the series, I hope by now you're starting to see faith is not this simple, static thing. It is a dynamic reality. It is something that is multifaceted, and that is what we're looking at in this series. We're looking at the different facets, like a diamond. You take a diamond, you turn it, and you see different parts of it, and the light reflects differently. That's what we're doing with faith as we walk through the life of Abraham. And what we're going to see today is what faith looks like in the midst of uncertainty. When things aren't as we expect, as we thought they should be, what does God have to say in a place like that? So, if you have your Bibles, would you turn with me to Genesis chapter 15? We're going to look at this incredible chapter that's going to help us understand certainty and uncertainty. Now, I got to say this right at the beginning. So, my wife, Jessica, this is her favorite chapter in the entire Bible. Now, if you don't know what's happening in this chapter, you're going to be like, really? Because what happens in this chapter is there are bloody animals split in two, and there's this giant mess of dead carcasses, and God's like, yes, this is what it's all about. And you're like, that's her vibe? Like, this is what she likes? I hope by the end of our sermon today, you're going to see the depths and the beauty of this story. Because while we, in this series, are looking at faith and looking at the life of Abraham, we're understanding what faith is all about. We're also doing something else. We're learning how to read the Bible well. Some of the things that we've said so far is we want to read slowly, because sometimes we'll read it really fast and we'll miss things. So a good practice is to just chew on it, go slow, take our time. We want to learn the importance of significant key words. We talked about that a bit in the last couple of weeks. Well, today, here's the skill or the winner that I want to highlight of why it's so important to learn to read the Bible well. It has to do with historical context. All of the Bible is historically grounded. There are things happening in the world, and it's not simply just events. What we're talking about are things about culture, understandings that the people who read the Bible originally would have assumed that we can miss. Today is one of those key examples. We want to take into account the fact that the Bible comes in a historical context. And we want to see it in that light. So I'm going to highlight some things that we wouldn't know otherwise. We just need our help, so we need resources to illuminate us on what's happening. So that's what we're going to do today. So if you're not there, Genesis chapter 15, we're going to take this in a few chunks, and I'm going to read through the whole chapter, but we're going to take it slowly and kind of walk through the different pieces. So, beginning at verses 1 through 3. After this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Don't be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. This is how God starts here in this moment. Like, here's a reminder. Don't be afraid. You can trust me. I'm your shield. I'm your very great reward. And so Abram's like, yeah, about that. Verse 2. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless? And the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be my heir. Now, if you've been with us, you will remember this, but just to connect the dots, God has given Abram a promise. He said, I'm going to build a great family with you. You're going to have a great name. There's going to be so many descendants. And Abram's like, oh, yeah, about that promise. It's not quite making sense right now. I'm an old man. I don't have any kids. Time's running out here, God. Like, why don't I have any offspring? Like, what are you doing here? And so, like, he's coming to God saying, you're my reward, but you haven't given me what you promised. What's up with that? Now, what I want to highlight here is the fact that Abram comes with questions, and God honors that. I think sometimes we can be afraid to ask God our questions. We can feel like, oh, I'm not trusting him, or I'm not supposed to do that. Like, God is inviting the question. He doesn't rebuke Abram. He doesn't say, you can't ask me that. Like, he's coming. He's like, hey, God, this isn't making sense to me. How am I supposed to reconcile this? And that's invited. God is inviting Abram to bring his question. So I just want you to see that right out of the gate. And so here, Abram is surfacing his uncertainty. This isn't making sense, God. You said one thing. It doesn't look like it's coming to pass. How do I understand that? And right here, what I want you to do is I want you to answer this question in your own. How do you handle uncertainty? What was the situation that you thought of a few minutes ago? The thing that came to your mind when you're like, I'm facing uncertainty, or I have, or I know it's coming. What came to your mind? What do you do with that? I think sometimes it's easy for us to avoid or dismiss. It's like, the answer, it's not a big deal. And we just kind of like stuff it down over here. We kind of ignore it. We just make it a little bit easier. Other times we try to plan our way through it, right? It's like, it's not quite lining up. It's not making sense. Maybe I got to work the problem. And so we try to control. We schedule it. We plan it out. We put in the structures or whatever the things we are that we need to make it happen. We try to work our way through the uncertainty. Sometimes we look to other people. Sometimes we try to find it in the things that we can manage and manipulate. Whatever it is, I think in some of these things we are trying to handle the uncertainty. There are some ways that are helpful and good, and some that are not so good. I think underneath all of it is we're looking for some kind of grounding. It feels chaotic. It feels unstable. What's my sure foundation? What can I rely upon? I think that's the underlying question. So what is it for you? What lever do you pull to handle uncertainty? What is it that you go to provide you that clarity, that certainty, that assurance, that grounding? That's what Abram's looking for right now. He's looking for this grounding. And it's there God meets him. And so what is it that God says in response? Like if we are looking for this place where I need something that's going to ground me, like what does God say in response? Well, verses 4 and 5. Then the word of the Lord came to him. This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. See, what God is doing, he's reminding of the promise, but then he's clarifying. Let me just be clear what I'm talking about here. This isn't some like surprise twist or whatever. Like, no. I'm giving a son who is born of your own flesh and blood. Let me clarify the promise for you. And in that, God is reminding Abram of the promise. Here is what you can rely on. You can come back to this. And so that's what he's doing here. But then he goes on. Verse 5. He took him outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them." Then he said to him, "So shall your offspring be." Let me just remind you of the promise, but let me give you an object lesson. And let me show you what it's going to be like. This will be your descendants, like the stars in the sky. Notice what that's doing for Abram. See, God is engaging his head. Let me help you think through this, but he's also engaging his heart. Imagine the impact that would have had on Abram in the moment. You want to know what your family's like? Take a look. It's going to be just like this. This is the promise that I'm giving you. And all of this is grounded in something God says next. Jump down with me to verse 7. He also said to him, "I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land, to take possession of it." God is reminding him of the promise. He's clarifying, but then he's reminding him of who he is. I am the Lord. This is what I have done. I have done this for you. What God is doing is he's grounding it in his character. I brought you out. This is what I've done for you. I'm reminding you of what is true here. This is what God is doing. He's reminding Abram of his character. He's reminding him that all of this whole thing is built on God and his promise. So, when we face moments of uncertainty, when Abram faced a moment of uncertainty, what God did is he gives assurance through promise. He gives assurance through promise. If we're looking and we face uncertainty, God steps in and says, "Let me tell you, here's who I am. You can be assured, this is my character. This is what I'm doing. This is the promise." Now, one of the things that we can sometimes do is we can go look for the promises of God. Maybe you've done that. Maybe you've been searching the Bible. It's like, okay, I've got this question. Like, God, what's your promise to this? And we go find the thing that tells me what I'm looking for. But what God is wanting us to see is it's less about the promise, the thing itself, and it's more about the promise maker. Sometimes we look for the promise instead of the promise maker. He's reminding Abram, here's what I've said, but it's all grounded in who I am. As we learned in week 2, the basis of faith is not our faithfulness. It's not the thing that we're trying to grab onto. What is it based on? It's on the faithfulness of God. So it's the only way that it's effective is him and what he has done. His promise is effective because it's him. It's not because of the promise itself. So sometimes we do that, where we go looking for the promise when he's wanting us to seek him as the promise maker. That's where the assurance comes. This is what he offers to us. So, if that is true, if he's offering us assurance through promise, how does Abram respond? Like, what is the proper response? We actually get that all in one verse, and I skipped it. Come with me back to verse 6. Abram believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness. This is one of the most profound verses in all of Scripture. I mean, just take it in for a second. God comes in, he's like, here, let me clarify. Let me remind you. Let me tell you who I am. And what does Abram do? He believes. He has faith. Now, again, if you've been with us, we've been using this synonym a lot. He trusts. That's the word I like the best here, because believe, we might just think like it's a mental thing, like, okay, I agree with it. No. It's active. He's now building things on this foundation. He believes, he trusts God and his promise. And it's active. That's what's happening here. Abram trusts God. Like, okay, I believe you. I'm going to go down that road that you're leading me. I'm trusting you. But notice what happens because of that. It is credited to him as righteousness. I want to camp on that word for just a minute, righteousness. It's a word, if you've grown up in church, you've probably heard it at one point or another, righteousness. We might think in our own minds that it's this thing of moral uprightness, right? Doing the right thing. And it certainly is that and contains that. But the word, at its heart, actually kind of like starts in a slightly different place. See, it's being right according to. It's relating rightly according to a standard or some kind of center. So when we hear that word, it means that we're relating rightly. We're in the right place. We're associating rightly to a way thing is supposed to be. It's operating according to design. That's what the word kind of at its heart means. And I think what God is doing here is saying, Abram, when you have faith, you are relating rightly to me, to the standard. You are operating in the right fashion, the way I intended. It is faith, trust, dependence. See, a lot of times when we think righteousness, we think all the things that I'm supposed to do, and we try to do that on our own. But at its heart, true righteousness is dependence on God. He's king. He's ruler. He's Lord. He's the one who sets the stage. He orders things. Everything falls according to him. When we operate in that way, we are in righteousness. That is what God is pointing to. And so when we think about righteousness, it should lead to the right kind of life. We should live it out. We should be righteous people. And so the moral uprightness is absolutely a fruit or a result of what this is all supposed to be. But notice that it starts with the right disposition, orientation, the right relationship to the standard, which is God. If we're not oriented correctly, we're not going to live the way we're supposed to, and we're going to be out of alignment. We will not be righteous. And so when we hear that word, we're to see that it starts with the right orientation. And what is that orientation? Trust and dependence on God. That's what's being set up here for us. Faith is the pathway forward. If we want to be righteous, to look righteously, to live a righteous life, where does it start? It starts with faith and dependence on God. So when Abram believes, notice what happens. God credits him as righteous. It's like he looks at his bank account and says, $1 million, righteous. He's like, yes, your faith, your turning towards me and trusting me is the way we're to relate to one another. That is righteousness. And so when Abram leans into that, when he steps toward God in this way, he is righteous. He is operating the way he's supposed to. But the thing that I want you to note about this, it's a gift. Who's the actor in this verse? It's God. God says, here's the promise. Let me clarify. Here's who I am. Abram believes. And what happens? God credits it to his account. He's the one that puts it in the bank. It's not Abram. It's not like he's figured it out and great, I'm working the system. Like, no. It's a gift from God. It comes from him. He's the one who makes it happen. This is not something we can attain. So this righteousness thing, being rightly related to God, it comes from him through faith. So I want to tie this then back to uncertainty and assurance. If God is promising, like, you can trust me, I will give you what you're looking for, the conduit to get there is faith and righteousness. So faith leads to relating rightly with God, which produces assurance. If you want to find assurance in the midst of uncertainty, it starts with faith, being oriented the right way to God and allowing him to relate rightly and credit back to you. This is the way life is supposed to go. And that produces assurance. Hebrews chapter 11, where we get this beautiful exploration of faith and Abraham being highlighted. It begins, the whole chapter begins. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Faith produces assurance because it comes through righteousness that is given to us. It's not based on circumstances. It's not based on our own power to make something happen. It is a gift from God. But I have a question. Would you count yourself righteous? When I think about it, when I'm like, oh man, like, am I righteous? Like, don't look at this list of things over here. Like, I wouldn't count myself there. I'm not righteous. So how can I be counted that way? Like, how does this happen? What is it that makes this a reality? Because it doesn't seem like you can just kind of slap a label on it and have everything work the way it's supposed to. How does this whole righteousness thing, how does assurance actually get communicated to us? It comes in the rest of the story. So, verse 8 and following. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know? I mean, really, how can I know? How can I know in the deepest kinds of levels that I will gain possession of it? Verse 9. So the Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Okay. Notice what happens next. Abram brought all these things to him, cut them in two, arranged the halves opposite one another. The birds, however, he did not cut. Then the birds of prey came down on the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. What? What's happening here? I mean, if we're reading this, it feels like a major shift, right? Like, how did we get to bring me some animals in response to this question? Did you notice? God didn't give him instructions on what to do next. Abram just knew. There's something going on that we miss as 21st century readers. What is happening here is God is cutting a covenant with Abram. This word covenant is not something that we use all that much. It's kind of an unfamiliar word, but what's happening here is something like where we do use the word covenant, maybe a bit today, marriage, right? You maybe have heard the word in that context, a marriage covenant. It's one of the places that we still use the word regularly. Actually, that is a great parallel to what is happening. See, what is going to take place here is God's going to enter into an agreement, a relationship, where here's what I'm going to do, here's what you're going to do, and we're going to have this connection. A lot of times, covenants would be cut between kings. They would make a treaty. Now, we might kind of think like, oh, this is like a contract. I don't think that's quite the right analogy. That's a little too impersonal. What's happening here is the formation of a relationship. But there are terms in that relationship. It's like, here's what I'm going to do, here's what you're going to do. So if you think about the context, Probably what most likely happens is a king is feeling the threat of invasion. An enemy's coming. And so what does he do? He goes to another king, oftentimes more powerful, and said, hey, I'm being threatened. Would you come be our allies? Would you support us, protect us? Can we use your resources? So that greater king would often be like, yeah, sure. Here's what I'll do. You can have my armies. You can have my men. We'll come defend. We'll come help you. But we'd like some resources in return. We know you've got this resource that's really helpful. Give us some of that. Pay us for some tribute and make sure we're joined together here. And so they'd strike up a deal. The way this was ratified was they would take animals, cut them up, separate the pieces so that there was an aisleway. Now you can picture it. It's messy, it stinks, there's flies and blood everywhere. What happens oftentimes is the lesser king would walk down the middle of that aisleway. And he's essentially saying, if I don't keep up my end of the bargain, you can make me like one of these animals. You can cut me to pieces. You can destroy me if I don't keep my end of the deal. Now, occasionally, some of these kings, if they were kind of similar, might both walk down, but more often than not, it's the lesser king walking through the path. I want you to hold on to that as we keep reading. So back with me to verse 12. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep. Now, if you've been reading Genesis, what's happened before that reminds you of this? Did someone else get put into a deep sleep? It was Adam when Eve was created, right? Something like that is about to happen. So that's just a little clue. Pay attention to what's about to take place. And a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterwards they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace, to be buried at a good old age. And in the 4th generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, to your descendants, I give this land from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Raphaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. Essentially, God said, here's the terms of my promise. But did you catch what was different? Back to verse 17. This weird image of a smoking fire pot with a blazing torch. If we keep reading in the Bible, we're going to get to the book of Exodus. And we're going to see a similar image emerge when God's presence shows up. Essentially, that's what's happening here. God's presence is now alive and present and there with Abram. And notice what happens. God's presence passes between the pieces. This is a twist in the story. See, normally, the lesser king is the one who walks through the pieces. This would be Abram in this case. But here, it's the greater king, the greater power, the greater authority. He is the one who's walking between the pieces and saying, if I don't keep this end of the bargain, you can make me like these animals. He's reversing. He's saying, I will become the lesser so that I can make you the greater. God is absorbing. He's taking on the consequences instead of Abram. That's the radical twist that's taking place in this moment. God is the one who's saying, I will absorb all of the consequences. You will not be punished. You will not be the one who suffers under this. I will. But if you know the story, Abram, his family, the nation that would come, they are not faithful covenant partners. They do not come through. Over and over again, they fail. They do not follow with their faithfulness to God. And so there is rupture. The relationship is fractured. It doesn't endure. And so something needs to be done. And this is all a foreshadowing of Jesus. See, there would be one who would come. His body would be broken, torn, destroyed. For the unfaithful covenant partners, Jesus is the fulfillment of this covenant, and he does it by sacrificing himself. Jesus would show up for the people who were unfaithful to God. He would step in and say, I will take the punishment. I will be like these animals. I will spill my blood for you so that you can be reconciled, so you can be made righteous, so you can have assurance. What God is doing in this moment in Genesis 15 will be foreshadowing what God will do on the cross when Jesus shows up. He will give up his life. He will become the sacrifice we need. He will be like those animals so that he can maintain the covenant that we have ruptured. Genesis 15 sets the stage for God's character. His willingness to absorb sacrifice for us. That is what is happening in this story. And because that's true, when we face uncertainty, it's not in our hands. We don't have any control, and we don't have to. He's the one who's making things happen. He's the one who's working things out. He's the one who brings faithfulness to this covenant partnership. He's the one who will see it through. So, some takeaways for us today. The first thing is that we've got to receive Jesus' sacrifice. It is a gift, just like what we see with Abram and the gift of righteousness. It's because of what Jesus has accomplished. 2 Corinthians 5:21, he who had no sin became sin for us so that we could become the righteousness of God. It is a gift that comes because Jesus sacrificed his life. Have you received that? Maybe for the very first time, you can do that right now. Like, I'm looking for assurance, God. There's so much uncertainty in my life. I don't have anywhere else I can turn, but I can turn to you. You can receive him. Receive the gift he offers, and you can begin following. But this isn't just a one-time thing that we do. It is for all of us to renew over and over and over again. So often in uncertainty, we turn to other things. We want to be grounded in other things. God is calling us back to him to ground ourselves in him and what he has done. To surrender, to let go, to humble ourselves and receive from him. We don't have to make something happen. We turn to him and let him lead. So receive Jesus' gift of sacrifice over and over and over again. And be changed and molded by that. Number 2, second takeaway. It is easy for us to face uncertainty and turn to other things and try to resolve the problem. But what I want to commend to you is that we are to face uncertainty and allow faith to live within it. So often we want to resolve the tension. We want to fix it. We want to make it all better. What if God is calling us to stand firm in the midst of the storm? So when we face uncertainty, don't try to work it all out. Don't try to control it. Don't try to make something happen, but rather trust God and live in that space within the uncertainty. He is the rock, the solid foundation. He steadies us in the midst of the storm. So can we choose to do that? Not pull the lever, but rather trust that he is the one we can be grounded in. Finally, number 3. Don't look for the promises, look for the promise maker. Don't look for the promises, look for the promise maker. Sometimes it's easy for us to flip through this and say, what does God promise me? I'm looking for the thing. And we can find it, right? We can find the thing that we're looking for. Like, this verse right here says what I want it to say. And we're looking for the thing rather than him. See, Abram, he's like, I don't know how all this is working out. God didn't give him all the information. Let me spell the whole thing out. No, he gave him what he needed to hear, to trust God. The call is for us to trust the promise maker. You might be looking for healing. You might be looking for your son or daughter to operate and live a certain way. You might be looking for a specific outcome. Maybe that's what God will do. But what we can do is we can trust him because he is steadfast. He is faithful. So seek him first. And then go look for promises. See what God has to say about that. When we do, we will find him. Excuse me. So, wrapping all this up, my voice is gone. Faith. Faith gives us assurance in the middle of uncertainty. No matter what we face, we can turn to him. He shows us the way forward. He allows us to be with him through the process. And he gives us assurance as we face it. So don't turn to anything else. Turn to him and put your faith in him, and he will give you assurance. Let's join together in prayer.